So in today's project we're going to work on this VLX Honda, and the issue that we're having is around electrical. So I got a kit here with a rectifier, a new stator and a gasket. We're also going to do some maintenance work as well. The reason I'm going to change all of these is because we're having power issues and I lost complete power at the last rally I was at. So here we're just taking off the cover so we can get to the stator. Also in the kit, as you saw, we have a new gasket, so we're going to replace the old one. So we're going to clean up this surface just to mount that onto once we get some access to the stator. As I said in the beginning, the reason we're doing this is due to a complete power loss that I had when I was riding it to a rally, and I don't think any of the electrics have been changed since this bike was built, which was in, I believe, 1996. So it's probably best just to change all the electrics. I could have gone and debugged everything and figured out exactly what was gone, but I just thought that buying a complete kit would have been easier and given me a better peace of mind. So you don't actually have to take these caps off to get the stator off. I just did so, and later on it was fortunate that I did so. So I'm just trying to give a tap on the stator cover just to loosen it from the engine block itself, and also using a pry bar, but making sure not to gouge into the soft aluminum of the engine. So I'm just taking the stator off the cover now, so it's just bolted to it. So I just take the stator cover outside just to drain some of the excess oil off, and I'm just routing the new one in. This was more tricky than I first thought. It was just due to the little grooves and connections for the cable, but after a little bit of time I was able to get it to fit properly. So I'm using a extremely long extension bar. The reason I'm doing that is just so that you can get a better view of what I'm doing, and I'm not blocking it, hopefully, with my hands. I would never use something this long for a job like this, but it's just for displaying. So now I'm just scraping off the old gasket, making sure not to gouge the soft aluminum. It's very easy to do so. So always take care when taking gaskets off. I'm just reassembling the gears now. And unfortunately, this is the old stator cover, which you saw in the last shot, has a massive crack on it. Now, I'm not too sure if I had caused this when trying to take it off, or had this always been cracked and just been held on by the gasket and friction. We got a new replacement one, and fortunately enough for myself, it was actually better chrome than what was previously there, although when I was ordering it, the seller was telling me that it was marked. So I'm just taking off these caps again, and I'm going to move over everything onto this new stator cover and get this ready. So off shot, I put everything together with the old stator cover, and it just started draining oil all over my shop floor. So I'm just cleaning it, just making sure to get rid of any of the dust or anything that may have been there from storage. Just making sure the stator is lining up with the mounting holes that are in the cover. So just for myself, to make sure I knew I had all the bolts, I just laid them out here, making sure I knew the difference between the engine bolts and what was being used to mount the stator itself. So I'm just putting on the gasket sealer here, making sure that all the surface is being covered. And trying not to get it into the holes just because it's annoying when it does so. And I'm just cleaning off the grease or any dirt that's left on the engine cover itself. So I'm using genuine Honda gaskets for this job. And I'm taking one of the engine bolts and sticking it through. But just before that, I'm going to smear the gasket so we got good surface coverage. And then I'm going to just make sure that one bolt fits into all the holes. Going to do the same by putting the gasket material on the mating surface. You don't have to do this. Sometimes you could just do it on one side, but for my own peace of mind, I did it on both. And making sure just to keep the gasket in place, I put a bolt there, making sure that's all aligned. So I'm just backing out these bolts now so that I can put the other bolts in, making sure not to pierce the gasket material. And I'm also trying to figure out where this cable organizer is going to go. This just keeps the cable away from the chain so we don't suddenly lose power because I've pierced the electrics. So what I like to do is I like to go first around a hand tool, then I use the automatic wrench and then hit that with the torque wrench then just to make sure I'm on the correct torque setting. The reason I do a hand tool first is I don't want to cross thread any of the bolts. The torque wrench out, I'm torquing up the spec now, making sure that I'm hearing the click. Making sure to go around clockwise as well. And I'm just cleaning up the chain cover here. It doesn't have to be done, but I just wanted to do it just to make sure, because there's no point of having something dirty. Also clean the inside just because all the grime that the chain is chucking up gets stuck there, and I just thought that, you know, there could be a case where maybe a piece sticks out or the chain gets caught, so I just thought I might as well clean it just to make sure that there's no issues in the future. And as you can see, I should have put another piece of paper down just to make sure, but nothing the cloth won't fix. So this was actually more difficult than I thought how to actually get in, so it's a little bit more fiddly. Eventually I got there. So the next job is going to replace the key barrel. So originally this key barrel had broken on me, so I replaced it with an aftermarket one on the other side on the side panel, just drilled in. And I didn't think that looked pretty nice, so I thought let's just go back to the factory approach. But there's anti-tamper screws here, so you just can't just unbolt it like you would any other bolt. You have to drill it out, and I use a screw extractor to pull that out. So a little back and forth with the drill, making sure that I'm drilling center and not wandering off. Then I just stick a screw extractor and a tap. I use an adjustable wrench here, and eventually I get it out. And this is what victory looks like. So I'm just making sure that the pads are aligned so I can just screw it in. These ones are no longer anti-tamper, they're just Phillips ones, so in the future it should be easy to rob my bike. so hopefully that doesn't happen. But also off camera I also changed the rectifier. So I'm taking off the seat pan and the cover here so I can get access to the wires where I can wire in from my aftermarket switch, because I no longer need it, to the new one. So you can see here I'm just looking at the old wiring, comparing it to what I need to do. So fortunately enough, I just kept the wiring black and red, so I know one's negative, one's positive. I'm just going to cut off the connector for the new switch barrel and just trim down the old wire I have. So I'm just using these heat shrink and solder connectors just to save time. And just trimming down some of the excess wire that I snipped off. So making sure they're both wrapped up, and then I just slip over the heat shrink and the solder, and then now I'm just using the heat gun just to melt down the solder and the heat shrink, and just making sure it's a secure connection. So I just want to make sure that my wiring isn't going to burn the bike or the shed down, so I'm just connecting it to the battery now and just seeing if everything is correct. I have the fire extinguisher and the emergency number on speed dial. So I also noticed there was another issue that was happening, was that everything worked but I wasn't seeing the neutral light. And when I tried to start the bike, it wouldn't start unless I had the kickstand up. So you can see here. And the minute I just kick the kickstand down, it just shuts off. So off camera I was able to find out it was just a little connector that was loose. Now it's just tidying up what I need to do. The two spots underneath the bike are from when I was trying to clean off the connection for the neutral, so it's not actually oil dripping from the bike. It's also zip tying all the wires that we changed earlier. And I went for orange zip ties just to stick with the theme of the bike, of course. So I placed the seat pan back on the bike just so we're putting it up, but also I wanted to double check that I wasn't arcing any of the wires or nothing was touching metal. So this little shroud was giving me a little bit of trouble. I couldn't remember the ordering that I had it. I know that it was supposed to be on top of the tank, but I didn't know should the seat be on top of that or underneath it, so a little back and forth trying to figure out what was the best way of doing it. Eventually we got there, so I'm just putting in the bolt that connects everything together. And just tighten up this seat because it became loose as we were trying to do some stuff. And putting the side panels on. So the way I fasten the side panels is using a technique from drift cars. So there's two little bobbles that a O-ring goes around and just clips them together. This just makes sure they're secure when I'm driving along. So I'm just putting on the last finishing touches of the side panel, and this is it. All the bike is complete.